Hey, this is Kieran, Coaches, Corners, Chats, and this episode I have Dakota Rock on with me. Dakota, give us a little background on what you're up to, where you're at, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I mean, when you gave the opportunity, I jumped on it. I think I was pretty quick to jump, but like Kieran said, Dakota, I'm down at Rhodes College right now in Memphis, Tennessee, NCAA Division III, originally from Columbus, Ohio. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, went to St. Francis de Sales in Columbus, ended up going to Guilford College to play. And then I kind of went from Guilford College to Liberty University for my master's degree. And while I was at Liberty, I started coaching at a school across town called Randolph College. They were in the same conference as Guilford, and then kind of went to Otterbein. And then last year, right before preseason, I got hired down here at Rhodes College.
So sounds like you've been all over the East Coast.
Yeah, I've become very familiar with the East Coast and all the states and everything along those lines. So yeah.
So did you play soccer at DeSales?
I did. I played there from 2008 to 2010 was my senior season.
Okay. And then did you go on to play at Guilford?
I ended up at Guilford, but before I ended up at Guilford, I kind of skipped over this part just because it's a lot to talk about. But my freshman year, I went to Lake Erie College in Ohio. And then after my freshman year, I ended up transferring. I went to Washington and Jefferson, which is in Washington, Pennsylvania, where I was actually born. And then my junior year and senior year, I ended up at Guilford College.
Got it. So just a lot of
I've kind of experienced it all. I've kind of been all over the place.
What caused some of the movement from throughout the college years?
Lake Erie just I got a lot of minutes my freshman season, and with the recruiting classes coming in, the coach was unsure where I really stood, and I wasn't really comfortable going into a spring season and continuing without being sure of what was going on or what would happen. So I ended up leaving there. Washington and Jefferson, I actually had to leave due to some financial issues. We hit a lot of financial hardship, and with how expensive Washington and Jefferson is, it just became too much for me and my family to take care of at that school.
So I think it's kind of cool, though, that the coach at Lake Erie was open enough to say, look, here's the situation. So you at least were able to make kind of a decision of, do I want to try to stick this out or do I want to move on?
Yeah, and it wasn't an easy decision either. It was really tough. I mean, I loved playing for the coach that was there at the time, and he was really good. Everything he was doing, he took over a program that I think only had one win the prior season, and we ended up going, I think, 500 my freshman year, which is, the improvement was there, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and I liked the vision that he was trying to take the team. But I just, I guess I wasn't settled with just being unsure, and I appreciated him for being that open with me, because it's easy to say as a coach, yeah, you're going to get playing time, just try to stick it out. But the fact that he was so open about just the fact that he didn't really know where I stood going into next year was really something that I admired, and just something that came down to the decision that I made leaving the school I was at.
Do you think that experience is something that, now that you're in the college ranks coaching wise, is that something that you think, have you learned from that as something I need to be open with my players that I work with as well?
Yeah, definitely. I coach on the women's side, so they don't kind of come to me with as much, just because I am a guy and they're not used to having guy coaches. I think when I was hired at Rhodes, one of the biggest questions was, well, how are you going to handle a women's team being a male? Because the classes that I had never had a male coach. So that was one of the big questions. And I think it has definitely, even like anywhere I've went, I've always had like this open door policy. Like anybody can come talk to me. You can, if you have questions. And one of the things that I always try to do is I'm going to be straightforward. Like I'm going to tell you what you might not want to hear, but I don't want to lead you on down a path that is going to lead to you not being happy.
Right on. Right on. I think it's cool that you get to share. And this is what I love about this podcast is that it's kind of cool to hear that you don't just because, you know, I'm kind of going with my oldest son is looking at playing, possibly playing college, and just like if it's not the right fit, just knowing like maybe it's not the situation, can there be, and it's all right to move because it looks like you've landed on your feet and now you've got a great opportunity coaching at Rhodes. What were some of the things that you learned and gathered, like gained from at the previous stop, so the one that was near Liberty? What were some of the things that you experienced there, coaching wise?
So when I was at Randolph College, it was that was like my first year. I coached like 2 years of youth soccer, but Randolph was my first like collegiate job. And I actually I emailed the coach out of a whim, and I was like, are you looking for like any volunteers to help out? And he was like, yeah, we're actually looking for help on the staff. So it was kind of cool. Like I kind of lucked out a little bit, but as soon as I got to Randolph, it was like everything that a veteran coach would be doing, I was doing. So like within my first month, within my first 2 months, I was already going on recruiting trips by myself. I was going to tournaments by myself. I was getting trusted running practices. I was getting trusted coming up with game plans. So it was kind of cool. Like right off the bat, I've never coached collegiate. I coached U11 and U12 before. And all of a sudden I'm getting like trusted with these collegiate game plans and running collegiate practices. So like a lot of confidence was gained, and I felt I grew a lot from that first year and I just kind of continued growing. I was on the men's side at Otterbein. I did 2 years at Randolph, and I was like, I think I kind of want to coach the men's side a little bit. So I gave it a try. It ended up not working out just because my personality, I didn't feel like my personality clicked a lot. But I am thankful that I did go to the men's side because the difference between the men's and the women's game is like huge. The way the games like run and everything like that. So I thought I learned a lot more that I wouldn't have learned at such a young age when I did go to that men's side. So I kind of took that, like the tactics wise and everything like that. The coach that I was under was very heavily tactical. Everything he wanted to do was tactical. And I learned a lot from there and have really carried that into the women's game from Otterbein to Rhodes.
So this is so cool. So you literally just said, just send an email out like, hey, if you guys need some help, I'm willing to hop in. And then even better, they said, come on in, and then gave you all kinds of opportunities to get responsibility, doing recruiting and getting the full feel. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it just it wasn't what I was expecting. So when I first came in and he started giving me all these, I was kind of taken aback because I was like, is he playing jokes or something? Like what's going on? But because I don't think many coaches, he was there for 15 years when I came in and ran it his way. All the assistants are part-time. So he doesn't have a full-time assistant.
Okay.
So everything was run how he would want it to be run, and bringing me in, giving me all that stuff, giving me the freedom of that stuff. It was kind of cool. And it was kind of awesome to gain that experience so young as a coach going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's that hands-on experience is so invaluable. And like you said, to have someone that experienced and kind of set in his ways, you're able to learn from that. And then you brought up the Otterbein thing, which I love the fact that you said, look, I'm used to the female, like the girl side and coaching that, but I wonder what it's like on the other side just to get that, see what the difference is. So you said tactics and how you coach, what are some things that you found that maybe you can get away with the male side, but you can't possibly maybe do with the female side? Or what are some of those differences that you kind of noticed?
I think when it comes to, at least from what I've witnessed and what I've experienced at the Division III level, a lot of the tactics when it comes to the women's side is normally the same. A lot of the teams run the same type of formation in the same type of way. But on the men's side, at least through that OAC, a lot of teams run different formations. And if it is the same formation, a lot of it's run differently. So having to watch film over and over again, trying to pick out the differences between the formations and everything. And even during games, a lot of tactical changes happen very quickly that I've learned different in the men's side than on the women's side. So having to adjust mid-game and in-game is something that I had to learn how to do. And kind of that has really helped here because a couple times we've run into that situation. I've been able to pick it out really quickly. But again, that's just at the Division III level. I don't know. I'm sure the Division I level is the tactics are a lot more in depth on the women's side, but just from my experience, that's what I've kind of learned.
So does that, after taking that away from the men's side, do you think that's something that now maybe with Rhodes you could maybe bring to the table of like, hey, maybe we do mix things up a little bit since there is so much kind of commonality. Maybe we be the one that changes how we play a certain style and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of run a similar formation than a lot of teams, but the way we play it is very different. So when we're watching film, and that's one of the things, like going into games, game weeks, is I have all the film broke down. So I'm in charge of breaking down film on opponents and us at Rhodes. So being able to look at what the opponents are running, I can cater what we're doing to their formation, and their system will play a little bit more. And being trusted with that is outstanding. Again, it's just like everything where I've been so lucky to be trusted by every coach that I've had as a young assistant.
I think the cool thing, and I've gotten this from other coaches I've talked to, is you just have to kind of reach out. You have to put yourself in positions. And I think the cool thing is that even at the college level, it wasn't like, oh, well, you haven't done, like you said, I was only doing with the U11, U12 kids. It wasn't like, oh, well, I need you to go do this, this, this. It was like, come on in, which I think is so cool. And so Rhodes is in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
And so Division III. So I've heard that seems to be kind of where you've been at. Is there, what's Dakota's future? Is there would you love to be like a head coach at Division III, or looking to go higher? What kind of things, or are you just kind of like, dude, I've been blessed, so I'm going to keep learning as much as I can at this point?
Yeah. So I'm very happy with where I'm at Rhodes right now. But at the same time, it's like the more I go along, the more I grow and the more confidence I gain. And like, okay, I feel like I'm ready for that next step. I feel like I'm ready for the jump to possibly a Division II school or a Division I school. And that's kind of where I want to go eventually. I'm coming up on my 5th year. So I'm 4.5 years into my college coaching career. So the 5-year plan is kind of almost at the end. And kind of that next step I'm looking to take in the next couple of years is possibly a Division I job, D1 assistant. But at the same time, I'm happy with grinding it out, learning as much as I can, and kind of waiting for that right opportunity to come. So, because this job is very competitive. So I'm going up for one job. I'm going up against maybe like 100 people. So, and it mostly comes down to who you know. So I know that I'm not going to get every opportunity that I apply for, or I'm not going to get the phone call from a head coach at the Division I level saying, hey, Dakota, come coach with me. Like, I'm going to have to work and grind to get to that point.
So how does one kind of get their name out there? Is it kind of like in the summers? Do you go and help out at camps at other universities and stuff, or what are some of those ways that you can kind of build as a coach that's maybe in your same position that they can get kind of their notoriety out there?
So I do camps a little bit. I was planning to do a lot more camps this past summer, but unfortunately the world got turned upside down.
Yes, it
I
did.
didn't do a lot of camps. I did a couple, and that's where I really I talked to a lot of coaches, but then also on the recruiting trail as well. Excuse me. When I'm sitting at tournaments in the corner with all kinds of coaches, and I think one thing that is really cool is the ECNL tournaments, because I go to the ECNL tournaments and I'm sitting next to the Memphis head coach, who they're top 10 in the country. I'm sitting next to like these big D1 coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my first one in Houston. I think I pulled up next to the Memphis a youth national team coach was sitting right next to me. And I'm like, am I supposed to be here right now? It was like such like, it wasn't like a fangirl moment, but it was like, I'm actually at some point of a level where I'm next to a youth national team coach watching the same girls that he is. And we might not get the same girls, but just like sitting there next to him. And it was really cool because I was at another game and the Memphis associate head coach is sitting there, and never met him before, never talked to him. And I don't know like how it happened, but it's halftime and I'm standing next to my chair, and he walks over, he goes, "Dakota, right?" And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how do you know my name?
What in the
And like,
world?
he like knew I was from, like, I coached at Otterbein. So somehow he knew I coached at Otterbein. Like he must've like saw it. And like, we're all, I don't like, at the tournaments, we all have our logos on.
Everybody's
So
representing. Yep.
undoubtedly he like looked me up, but the fact that like, one, he took the time to look it up, and two, come over and introduce himself was like super cool. And that's how I kind of meet other coaches. I kind of like put myself out there at tournaments, even if it's just to say hi, how you doing, or whatever. I mean, just talking and going to camps and just getting my name out there is something that I'm really trying to do.
So how often do you go out recruiting? So what is college recruiting like at the college level? What goes
So
into recruiting, I guess maybe?
So like August to November or mid-November, we don't really do much outside of, we host an ID camp, and then we do like videos, and like whoever emails us will like watch their videos or whatever. But once Thanksgiving weekend starts is when the tournaments go. So it's me and the head coach, we kind of split it up. So we're gone between Thanksgiving and maybe like mid-December. We're gone every weekend. And then once we get back in January, normally I'm gone, or one of us is gone twice in February. And then we kind of one tournament in March and then one tournament in April. And then we kind of try to divvy it up. Those are the big tournaments. And then we try to hit some smaller tournaments, just depending on what our schedule looks like and what the tournaments look like as well. If it's a tournament we believe has enough teams to even look at, then we'll go. But it also comes down to like where our hotspots are. So where we get most of our players, we'll tend to hit those areas a little more than areas that we don't get players from.
So almost like I'm assuming probably the Memphis area is something that you guys get a number of your players from.
Actually, no. We only have one player on our current roster from Memphis.
Huh.
And I believe she is the only Tennessee girl as well. We had a Tennessee girl last year, and so we had two, but then the one graduated, so we only have one Tennessee girl.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. So a lot of out-of-state people coming into play.
Yep, and we kind of come from all over. We have Dallas as a hotspot, Georgia. We have a couple California girls on our team, a New York girl. So we have an Ohio girl actually from the Cincinnati area. So we have girls from like all over the place. It's just Tennessee seems to be a state where everybody wants to go out of town or out of state, and if they don't go out of state, they want to go to UT, Knoxville, or you have Vanderbilt. So, and we compete with those schools on an academic level. So maybe they would just go to Vandy or UTK for academics.
Right on, right on. Uh, so the coach you're with now, so you've gone from, you had the awesome experience of kind of getting just like, here, rock and roll, do some stuff when you're in where's Liberty? What state's that in?
That's in Virginia. It's in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Okay, so the Virginia area, and then you headed back to Otterbein in Ohio, and now you're down in Tennessee. So now what things does this new coach bring that you enjoy, being in the mix with?
So the coach I'm with now is actually a female. So it's the first female coach that I've worked with. So she kind of brings a different kind of aspect to the way things are run. A lot of things is they're a lot more personable. So everything we do is person first, relationship first. There's no room for soccer first. It's always person first. And I really like that because that's exactly kind of who I am. I always very much focus a lot of my energy on the person first because I believe after you know the person, then everything starts clicking a little bit easier. It's easier to coach them. It's easier for them to be your player. It's easier for them to take instruction. And kind of, I mean, relationships have always been the core of who I am as a coach. I have players that I coach with, or I have coached even from my U11 years that are still in contact with me. I have players from Randolph who are still in contact with me, and just like, and it's nothing serious. It's just like, hey, how you doing? Like, how's life or whatever. And it's just like always random. So it's always cool to kind of continue those relationships like as you go, because it also means that you had some sort of impact on their lives. I mean, to know that they still even want to say hi to me 4 years, 5 years later, it's pretty cool. And it means a lot to me that they're going out of their way sometimes just to say hi, how you doing? And I check on them sometimes, see some of them are in grad school, like, hey, how's grad school going? Like, if you ever needed like letters of recommendation, just let me know. And just like sort of stuff like that. It's just building the relationships and keeping everything person first down here that really sets this coach apart from everything that I've been at. Not saying the other places haven't been focused on the person, but this lady, Katie, who's the head coach, I mean, she really puts it at the center of everything, and there's no wavering from any of that.
So the idea of like environment, culture, family, those are things that constantly are like a common theme throughout everything that you guys do.
Yeah, the family aspect is huge. I mean, it's something you hear from every college coach, and it's like, hey, yeah, you got that family environment, you got that family culture. And a lot of times it's true, but I always like to think this is the place where I see it the most that I've ever been with. I mean, there's no drama between any of the players. You never have players coming to you saying, hey, like, so and so's doing this, or I didn't get invited to the birthday party. Like, none of that. And every time you walk around campus, it's not just one player you see six. You don't see like one or two by themselves. You see everywhere you go, you see five or six. And it's just like, and they can't get enough of each other. I mean, they're always around each other no matter where you go. And to know that they can never get sick of each other is really means something when you kind of put that family aspect into the culture area.
The thing that's cool about that is that it's one thing to do it like, oh, we're in the locker room, we're all kumbaya and we'll do all our things. But like you said, to be in those moments where you're just walking to class and they're still connected, or if it's at lunch or if it's just hanging out, that bodes huge for what you and the head coach have gotten, especially like you said, with the way that the world is right now. Those little conversations of, or just saying, hey, how are you doing right now, is huge for the kids that have moved on to grad school. Because like you said, a lot of times they graduate and then it's like, well, I want to move on to the next group. But it sounds like you continue to keep those relationships building. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So in terms of that family aspect, have you seen that have a positive impact on the quality of play?
Yeah, and I mean, it comes down to the team chemistry too. And I think just because you kind of the amount of time they spend together off the field also kind of translates on the field because they kind of know how each other think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay, so and so thinks this way, so it's going to be this way. Or she might be here for a pass, and it kind of helps the play a little bit more too. So I do believe that it definitely helps the play on the field as well.
That's awesome. That is so cool. So what took you on the route of coaching? Was this something that as a high schooler at DeSales, you said, hey, I'd love to coach one day? Or was it kind of working your way through college and your experience? Or what was the impetus to send that initial email that said, you know what, I'm going to try to go coach college?
So I actually had no intention of coaching college up until I started coaching college, actually. It's like, it's a funny story. So like I started out majoring in business. So I always thought I was going to go into business. My junior year, my coach at Guilford, he goes, hey guys, like the state of Tennessee is putting on a coaching course. It's like super cheap. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take it. I'll maybe coach youth for a little bit while I'm not working in the business world or whatever, like so many club coaches do nowadays because they all hold like second jobs and like stuff like that. So I was like, I'll do that. So I ended up getting it. I finished out. I had an extra semester of undergrad, so which I didn't have eligibility for. So I kind of like sat there and like watched the team play a little bit, and I was like, okay, maybe I miss it a little bit. I'm not sure. And then I get done with club. I'm getting ready to go to grad school, and I just like missed it. So it was like, hey, I'm just gonna like, and I emailed the Liberty coaches and I was like, hey, like, you have any room for like a GA or whatever? And like due to NCAA rules, I guess like they had 2 full-time assistants, so you can't have a GA. So I was like, okay, cool, like that's fine. So I was like, there's a school right across town. Let me just take a look. And he had 2 other assistants, but I was like, I'm just going to take a chance anyway. So I like randomly emailed him, and I think within 2 days I was over there, like just meeting him with my resume and kind of talking about like what he would expect and what I would expect. And it kind of just took off from there. And I won't turn back from now on. Like, this is exactly what I want to do. And I feel this is where exactly I need to be. Like, I always talk about purpose in life and purpose on the soccer field, purpose in classroom. And I believe the purpose that I'm fulfilling right now is helping people like in life, really. I'm not just a soccer coach. I'm a person first. And these kids go on to be more than just student athletes. They go on to be doctors. They go on to be lawyers and everything like that. And to help shape their lives in even the littlest bit, I feel like that's my purpose. And to be able to do it through soccer was going to be the most easiest avenue to do it. Like, you can change people's lives in every aspect in whatever business you're in, and you're a teacher, you're a bank teller, whatever. Like, you can always change somebody's life. But to me, I really felt like playing soccer my whole life, this was exactly where God kind of wanted me to be. It was like, hey, I want you to change people's lives, and you're going to do it through soccer because that's what you know the most.
I'm like speechless because that's so freaking cool. Because it's like you said, it was almost like you had to kind of follow your heart a little bit when you sent those initial emails, and the fact that, which I think is so cool for people to hear, you sent an initial email to Liberty, and it just didn't work out. We didn't have a spot. That's fine. And then, but you didn't sit there and go, well, I guess that means I'm not going to coach. You then went and looked at another option, and you've kind of kept doing that, and it's gotten to you to where you're at now, which I think so so stinking cool. And how was that first coaching class? What was that like going in as a player mindset to all of a sudden now kind of learning some of the coaching things? What was that experience like?
From what I remember, it was pretty weird. Like the stuff that they taught you and like the stuff that you wouldn't expect from a coach. Like you're like as a player, you don't think anything of what goes on behind closed doors or what goes through a coach's mind really. So it's kind of like an eye opener. It was like, oh, like I remember the one thing they told us, like my coaches have always used whistles. And I remember my E course, it was the old E before they moved to like the new methodology and like the course. And I remember the first thing he told us is, we're not going to use whistles. Like that's the worst thing to do as a coach. And I'm sitting there like, I've coached by a whistle my whole entire life. I was like, why is this? And he goes, because it brings a negative connotation. So I was like, I guess I could see that a little bit, but it was like, oh, like wasn't expecting that. And actually I've never coached with a whistle in my whole entire 7 years of actual coaching, which is kind of crazy. I have a whistle if I need one, but I kind of don't use it. It kind of sits in my pocket.
I'm similar. I went through a similar court, same thing when I went through my E and such. Um, I'm the same way, lose a lot of voice type things. And I use the whistle usually just for transitions, like, hey, now we're moving on to like, go get a drink. And you've got, just let them know when they need to get moving and stuff. But I think the things I keep hearing from you, like from the Otterbein experience to like that course to you've done a great job of kind of pulling bits and pieces, like even to remember that nugget from whatever a handful of years ago, and it still resonates with you. Like those cool, and like just like you said, how things went at the male, on that side of things versus how was it female, and how now you've taken like the first two experiences and now it's at Rhodes, and you're seeing. It sounds like too, just for you, you've got a maturity of kind of like you talk about purpose, and I've heard just that whole idea of family and just kind of like what I want to make in terms of impact. I think it's huge. People don't understand how big, like even like you said, when people still that you don't coach after a few years still call you coach, that's the impact that you're making on people. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, then kind of that story is like going back to my U11. I tweeted about it the other day, but it was like the kid quit soccer the year after I stopped coaching him. I moved on to college, and he quit because the coach that he had like drove the love of the game out for him. And he's 11 years old at the time. So it was like, okay, the coach, like, he doesn't love the game anymore. He texted me the other day, or his mom texted me, and then he texted me and was like, hey, just to let you know, I'm trying out for like, he's a sophomore in high school now, which is insane to even think of. But He was like, yeah, trying out for my high school team. And the next day he's texted me and said, hey, I made JV, like super excited. And he's like, the coach said I could possibly play varsity sometimes this year. And I was like, I was super happy, because those are the things that, like, the fact that he quit the game and then came back to it was like, I love seeing that, because like, and that happens so often within this career in this world, is like one person can like change everything for you. It can take complete love out of it for you. And no matter what it is either, it could be any sports, it could be music, it could be reading, it could be whatever that you love doing. One person can say something negative and kind of drive it away from you, and you might never pick up a soccer ball again, or you might never pick up your clarinet again, or whatever it is that you love to do, you might never do it again just because somebody said a couple things. And it's crazy how we have that happening so often in this world.
Yeah, I think your perspective is spot on versus some people are so results oriented, and so like you said, at the age of 11, like take a chill pill, coach, with that. But I think the cool thing is what you're saying, and then now what you have as a head coach seems to just like meshes perfectly with how you like to like your outlook of like, here's the impact we want to make on kids and what have you.
Yeah, and I mean, we had our first team meeting today, and I've been doing a lot of self-reflecting. I've had so much time, like through COVID and quarantine, just like everybody has. And one of the things, I went to the team today, and this is something I've never done before. Like, I always just try to learn on the fly. But I went to my team. I was like, I'm going to do something different this year. I want everybody to email me how best I can coach you. So instead of me just coaching them the way I think they want to be coached or the way I think they're going to get the most out of it, told them to email me like 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't even have to be long. It could be as easy as, yeah, I like to be coached just by you cheering me on the whole time. I like always positive reinforcement. Like, I don't like coaches who get stern with me. And that's kind of something where like it's going to happen. Like, I'm wanting to cater to them. I want it to be a player-centered environment. I'm working to bring a more player-centered environment instead of like a coaching environment. A lot of things that I'm going to be doing different this year is going to come from that. It's so, because again, like coaches, and I've done it too, breaking down film, I can sit there and be like, hey, you should have passed here or you should have passed there. But at the same time, I want my players to be very creative with the ball. I want them to do what they want to do. I want to see them kind of express themselves on the field. And if I'm sitting there going, hey, you should have passed here or pass there or shoot here, I mean, they're never going to be able to reach their full potential, one, as an individual player, but two, as a team as well, because there's no expression. Everything's okay. It's like military. It's like you do this, you do that, and you can't really express yourself. So I'm doing a lot of things. I'm going to experiment a little bit this spring. And I think the time that I will have with the team and the fact that we have less games than before, I think hopefully it's going to pay off in the long run for a lot of these girls.
I think it's cool that you're, like you said, I think you're recognizing even for yourself and from like just the experiences that every player has a different kind of makeup. They bring something different to the field, different qualities. Some are, some are talkers, some are quiet. And the fact that you're recognizing that I can't coach every player out there the same way. So I think it's cool that you're actually coming to them and saying, look, I want to support you in the best way I can. So give me some ideas as to what can I do that's going to help you be the best version of yourself on and off the soccer field, which I think is huge. Like you said, I don't think coaches, we get so top ended, like, hey, I'm looking down and take care of everything. And I think it's cool for you to kind of, like you said, it's got a little uncomfortable, but something different. And, it might be cool, might not be. But I think it's cool that you at least get there and then there's that idea, the family thing that you talked about earlier. Now they've got some ownership in their development. And plus you can keep checking in like, hey, is the support I'm giving you enough? Or did I come down on you too hard? You said you'd like to be kind of like kept accountable. And is that too much? Not enough. I think will be interesting. I'll be excited to check in during the spring and see how that dynamic's working, because that might be something I steal and start doing with my high school group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's exactly what coaches, like the coaching community is I can share something and it might work for me, but it might not work for somebody else. But at the same time, I could share something that somebody else has never tried, and it could be the best thing that they ever tried after it, but they wouldn't have known, or if I never shared or something like that. I think a lot of the coaching, and that's one thing I have learned about the coaching community, is it's not the most open, but it is very open. Like, everybody's always willing to share their experiences or their like different things that they've tried for others to try. And I mean, I take stuff from Twitter, what other people are doing all the time, and try it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I always love hearing what other people are doing and kind of seeing if it works for me, because I'll never know if I don't try it.
Right on. Hey, I mentioned before we hopped on here, all those scarves behind you. So are those just things that people have sent you, or have you actually been and watched like Leeds United? I see in England one and Real Madrid. Have you been and seen some of those teams play?
So a few of them have, a few of them I have, a few of them I haven't. I've seen Manchester United. I went to Boxing Day 2016 against Sunderland. which was really cool. I mean, me and my mom, the story behind that is it's absolutely crazy, but I've seen Memphis FC, I've seen Columbus, I've been to the Bernabeu and Camp Nou. Crystal Palace, I had a friend grab for me. And then I also did a little bit of podcasting back at the beginning of COVID, when COVID first hit back in like from March to maybe June. And then so I got the Forward Madison and the San Antonio FC. I got those because we interviewed a couple players from both of those teams on that podcast I was on. So just kind of like different things. I have family over in England, so I have that kind of representing that side of the family. So it's they're kind of from all over the place, and they all come from different places.
I think the cool thing about that is, and I can already tell just from you talking about it, is each scarf has its own little story with it, which I think is really, really freaking cool. So as your wall keeps growing, as you have more experience as coaching, and maybe Rhodes goes on a European tour at some point, like in an off-season thing when things are back to normal, and what have you. But just those experience. So the Manchester United, just what was the energy like in that stadium?
What was that again? I'm sorry.
What was the energy like when at the Manchester United game in that stadium?
Oh, I mean, it was unreal. I mean, me and my mom, we got like tickets in like the northern end of Stretford End, so right behind the goal, the singing section and all that. And they were playing, the coach at the time at Sunderland was David Moyes,
Yeah.
which was like a year or two after he left United, because I believe it was Van Gaal, I believe, was the coach at United at the time. So it was like the energy was crazy. I remember this one time, like, and you don't think about it. I said like Michael Carrick gave away the ball one time, and I was like, Michael Carrick, I was like, you suck or something like that. And like over here, it's just a knee jerk reaction. Like, okay, he doesn't suck, but he gave away the ball, so he sucks in that moment. And I remember turning around and some guy yells at me. He goes, "You never say that about Michael Carrick," and like started getting really mad at me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean he like sucks permanently, but like
I was
he
doing
did
my
get
quick commentating.
yeah. So it was like it was funny, and all the singing, like just the whole energy. And we got there a little late too. I think we got there like 30 seconds after the kickoff whistle, but so we didn't get like the build up and everything like that. But I mean, it was absolutely insane. And then just the scenes afterwards outside of the stadium and everything, it was unbelievable. It's definitely something that I suggest to everybody, if it ever becomes an opportunity to see a Boxing Day game anywhere. But it was unbelievable.
That is so stinking cool, man. You have dropped so much like knowledge in this one. It's been so cool to hear kind of your journey. If people want to follow and connect with you, what's some of the best ways to do that?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Twitter. Twitter is going to be my biggest one. I think it's Coach Rock, RHO. But that's going to be the biggest one for me. I mean, I have Instagram, but it's kind of like I don't really use it. So Twitter's most likely going to be the best one for me. It's the same with Facebook. I don't really use Facebook. Like I have them, but I really don't use them. So anybody wants to follow me, it's going to be the best avenue is going to be Twitter. And they can reach out. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I love talking to people. I love sharing my journey. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. And that's why I jumped at this opportunity, is because I love sharing, because you don't know what somebody else can take from this journey that I have. Because it might be somebody who's like hesitating whether if they want to get into coaching or not. And maybe my story is the one that pushes them to send an email because of how lucky I've been. Maybe that's the one. I don't know, but anything. But yeah, it's going to be Coach Rock, ROCK, and then RHO.
And I will put I mean, I'll tag him on Twitter when I post the episode, and I'll put it in the notes and all that kind of stuff. So, and I would go out and follow because he's got just lots of great ideas he's sharing out there on Twitter. And just like I said, his journey's been so cool. The cool thing about the podcast is you can only get so much out of 140 characters on Twitter about people. So now to put kind of this, like I see this in my head, I can see you going from Columbus in high school to moving and then ending up at Liberty and then, or, you know, all the bouncing and back to Otterbein and now back down to Memphis is so freaking cool. And then within that, all the scarves behind you just is another thing that's kind of interwoven and what have you. So I'll shut this thing down. Hey, this is Kieran, Coach's Corner Chats, and I'm out. Peace.